So this month we've got Mike, and well, actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk about what you do.
Okay, cool. Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Mike. I've been running a bootcamp for the last 10 years. We're based in Bath. We're currently the #1 rated bootcamp in the world. Have been for the last 5 years. I actually finished working there in 8 days. So, and then I'm going to go and do something else. But I'm here to talk about bootcamp stuff, at least for the next 8 days. Yeah, that's what I do basically. We teach people to code. Well, we teach software development and data science and a little bit of cybersecurity. Help people basically enter the industry, and then we also have a whole range of like CPD upskilling workshops for people already in the industry if they want to like upskill in certain areas. We do training around that as well.
Okay, thank you. And the format of this, I'm going to start with a few questions, but when you've got questions, just pop your hands up and ask Mike. So I suppose the first thing is, like the normal boot camp, I don't remember them existing when I was learning. What is the format? How long is it? You know, what's the entry level requirements? How long is it for? What do you get at the end of it?
Yeah. Okay. So bootcamps as an idea in the UK have been around for about 11 years. My company was the second one in the UK to set up. So they are a fairly new kind of concept, and they sort of are based on like the idea of like intense workouts. You know, like you can go to the gym every week, once a week, or instead, if you want to get fit, you can go and do like a fitness boot camp where you like work out every day for 5 weeks and lose a bunch of weight for summer or whatever. And it's basically based on that kind of same model. So it's intensive learning. Most boot camps are somewhere between 8 and 16 weeks long. Depends on what you're learning, how much content, how long the days are. But they're generally full-time courses. So you're looking at like Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for sort of 10, 12 weeks is kind of the average. The idea being that they would take somebody from minimal knowledge in a subject area up to enough knowledge to get a job in that industry.
And so then do you support them getting jobs as well? Is that part of it, or is that an optional extra?
Yeah, so that ranges different providers. So some providers will not give that as a service at all. Others do. So we do. It's just part and parcel of what we do. But it's not always included, so you kind of have to check with that stuff. But yeah, most of the good ones will provide a career service as well. So they'll help with being introduced to the industry, meeting companies, how to like set up career stuff. So like CV writing, how to apply for jobs, how to do technical tests, all of that kind of stuff. And then general sort of networking and introductions really. It does vary. Some boot camps will charge a fee for that service. Some it's like included. It's a bit variety.
Cool. And how? Sorry, did you have a question? Oh no, after you.
I was going to ask. I guess what's your views on your approach to teaching fundamentals versus like frameworks and stuff? Because it could be like, you teach you Laravel and then you can go and get a Laravel job, but then like they don't really know much about the fundamentals of software engineering. But trying to teach someone software engineering stuff can be useful, but that could be hard to then get a job then versus someone who's like then got Laravel experience. What's your kind of just views around like that balance and
Yeah, this is a really good question. I really like this question because I struggled with this for a long time, and I don't know that I've got an answer really. But when I started the first curriculums that I wrote, I took the approach of teaching software engineering and not teaching like the popular tool. So IO's approach, and it still is now, is teach fundamental concepts, not even necessarily language based. So like we generally try and teach things fairly language agnostically. So start with the absolute fundamentals of like what's a loop, what's an if statement, not even relating that to a specific language, and then work our way up to the tooling. So we do teach Laravel. but we teach that right at the end, after kind of laying all the foundational knowledge. I'll be honest, we are the most expensive bootcamp in the UK. We are the longest bootcamp in the UK, and that's because we take that approach. So the majority of bootcamps that exist don't. Most of them will just throw Laravel and React at you straight away, like day one, here's HTML, day two, here's React. And I think it's gross. I don't know how anybody can write JavaScript by learning React first. Doesn't make any sense to me, but that is how a lot of them do it.
I guess part of the reason why they do that is because if they're looking at stats, they want to see, oh, this many people got hired after they did that thing.
Yeah.
And it's technically easier to get hired if it's like...
Yeah. I mean, I know exactly why they do it. From a business perspective, it makes complete sense because all they do is process job adverts that are out there and go, most people need React, so we'll teach that as the primary skill. Most people need Laravel, so we'll teach that as a primary skill. But that doesn't create developers that have long-term careers.
Finds a job, not necessarily the right job.
Yeah, I've always taken the approach as somebody who was a software developer for 15 years before I started the company, I've very much taken the software development approach. This is a little bit in depth about me, but like when I started, I learned jQuery before I learned JavaScript. I was one of those devs. And then when jQuery started to die, I was like, wait, JavaScript is a thing? And I didn't want anybody else to go through the same thing that I remember having to do with and trying to do that from React back to JavaScript. I can't even imagine what that would be like. So no, don't do that way.
Mike, what's the dropout rate for these bootcamps typically? As in someone that starts as maybe a career changer, wanting to sort of see bootcamp as a kickstart into a new career, perhaps. Is it like 50% dropout, or do you tend to get, because of the investment, the financial investment, perhaps, do you get like a higher rate of people going on to complete that bootcamp and perhaps doing another one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Dropout rates. So pre-2021, it was very low. Our dropout rate was about 0.5%. So basically nobody did. The courses are like 10 grand plus. Once you've dropped that much money on something, you're not going to drop out without serious reason to do it. Our dropout rate was pretty much someone got pregnant and another guy died. That's pretty much the only time people were dropping out. But in 2021, as part of the government's approach to trying to rebuild the country post-COVID, they poured a load of money into boot camps because we were quite successful, and they made loads of them free. And now about 60% of what we do is free. About 100% of most of our competitors do is free, and therefore the dropout rate now for free courses is about 70%. Really high because people just sign up because they don't care because it's free and why not. And the job center sends people to us, and we're all over government websites and everything. And there's basically no obligation and no downside to signing up and then dropping out. So the dropout rate has got really high in the last few years.
So you can get a free £10,000 bootcamp course at the moment.
You can at the moment, yeah.
Where's that in?
Yeah.
Not URL.
Are you doing those in person or online?
Both. Yeah, most providers are just doing them online because it's cheaper. But we have a training center in Bath, and we do them in person.
Any thoughts on whether it goes better in person or online?
Oh, it's 100% better in person. Yeah, I think you'll never beat in-person training in anything, whether it's bootcamp training or CPD one-day workshops or whatever it is. In-person training will always beat online training for virtually anything.
And in terms of, so I always think bootcamp is for people wanting to start out, but is that actually available to people who've maybe been in the industry for a bit, or very experienced people, or? Yeah,
so it's definitely, so they're open to everybody. Anybody can sign up, particularly if you pay for it. But yeah, there's a whole range of stuff. So for our software boot camps, we have people who were software devs and then stopped to have kids and are now kind of trying to rejoin the industry, returners. We have people who have come from other countries and want to learn about how software development works in this country and like the UK best practices and our ways of doing things. That's quite a common one. We have people that come from like software development, but in completely different like areas of development, where maybe somebody's been I don't know, doing a bunch of embedded programming in low-level languages, and then they want to transition into web stuff. So they come to a bootcamp for that. So yes, it's definitely open to everybody. The other side of it is that we also have so we do a data science bootcamp, and that's most commonly taken up by people who are already software developers and are looking to kind of add the like data science machine learning skill set onto what they're already doing. So because it's a part-time course and it's a bit shorter, although we do get people who are absolutely brand new to data science and want to get into like data analysis and things like that. About 50% of our students on the data science course are actively working as software devs and are then learning how to do like machine learning and neural nets and all that kind of stuff.
And this works is part-time, so in the evenings or
yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. And then I suppose the other side of the coin is, I suppose if we've been in the industry for a while and maybe we're involved in recruitment, and then here comes a CV with somebody from a boot camp, how should we compare them to, I don't know, a computer science graduate, a tech degree graduate, or versus anyone, someone who's been in the industry for say a year or two? What kind of things should we look at or consider?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that generally, like the difference between a bootcamp graduate and somebody who's done a comp sci degree, for example, is one practical experience, but two is specificity, right? If you study comp sci, you study a really broad range of subjects, and therefore you have a whole bunch of like quite broad knowledge, a lot of which will then not be relevant to a job. But some of it will be. Whereas if you do a boot camp, you tend to study like quite specific things, like you study software development or web or React or whatever. If that's if what the boot camp teaches is what you do, even if it's kind of vaguely related, then you'll probably find that the boot camp graduate will outperform a comp sci graduate at least initially. But it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a whole bunch of like algorithmic computational stuff. One of my friends just got a job working for a drone company doing the maths to make sure they didn't fly into each other. None of my bootcamp graduates could do that. Like we just don't teach that level of algorithm stuff, O notation, any of that. Like we just don't. So it really depends on what you're doing as to kind of this. You just need to consider the skill set. But definitely, if you're building like Laravel APIs, WordPress stuff, React UIs, then a bootcamp graduate will have direct real world experience doing those things and will outperform a comp sci graduate, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah. So do you have stats on how many people get a job within, I don't know, is it measured? Is there like an industry standard, within 3 months, 6 months, or?
Yeah. So pre-2020, there was an industry standard of measuring it within 3 or 6 months. So up until that thing that happened in March 2020, we had a 100% placement rate. So every single one of our graduates had a job within 3 months. Most boot camps at the time were advertising similar figures. 98, 97, 96% was kind of the average around the time. Obviously, COVID 2020, jobs fell off a cliff. Nobody got anything. Nobody got any jobs, and the industry's basically just completely stopped advertising those stats now.
It's not good.
Yeah, No. I'm absolutely hold up my hands. They are really quite bad now. 2020 we delivered we actually did okay. We delivered about 70% of people got a job within 3 months. It's now down to something like 18%. It's really not very good, but that's because the job market's just awful.
So that's more external.
Yeah. I mean, what can you like? I can't magic up jobs. That's your problem.
Question around diversity. What's yeah, I guess what kind of spread and stuff do you have? Have you seen kind of any kind of change or uptick in kind of, you know, underrepresented people in the kind of tech community? Historically, it's been a very kind of white, cis male dominant kind of industry. And, you know, so I guess some context we're doing some stuff with CodeBar. I don't know if you come across CodeBar, which, for those who don't know, it's as a charity aimed at kind of running programming workshops and stuff for those underrepresented in the industry. So like that's kind of like it's not like a boot camp, it's just they come along and maybe like learn a few things a little more casual. Have you kind of found people come from that kind of to you, or have you found kind of much change in kind of, I guess just a general question around that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing to say is that we're based in Bath, and the diversity of the general populace in Bath is not great. But yes, we definitely, like, bootcamps in general, I would say, are a really good driver for improving diversity within the industry. It's one of the things that a lot of providers sort of have as their like main flagship thing. There's actually quite a few bootcamps that exist purely for that. So there's Black Girl Coders, She Codes, Tech She Can. There's all sorts of like boot camps that are designed to bring women or to bring ethnic minorities or whatever into the industry. A lot of the more general boot camps like IO have diversity scholarships where people from different backgrounds can get money off or free places on courses. Generally, so the last time I looked at the stats, it was something like 17% of the software industry was female, and on average, it's about 30% of students in the in an average boot camp is female. So they are kind of slowly improving things, but it's not a quick process. We generally, as a company, are averaging about 45%, so we're a little bit better than the industry average at the moment. But it's an uphill battle.
Oh, that's right. Why do you think that is?
So
just because you've got kind of,
it's useful. I mean, we do quite a lot of like active outreach. I think a lot of providers in this space do it quite passively. Like they have a diversity scholarship and then they don't really do anything more. Like if women apply to it, then great, and that's about as much as they get. Whereas we do quite a lot of active stuff. So like we don't sponsor Code Hub, we don't sponsor CodeBar, we sponsor Code Hub, which is a Bristol-based one that does the same kind of thing. So we do like a lot of like a bit more proactive, I think. I couldn't really talk to other providers as to why we're better than them. I don't know. We just are.
And I suppose, it's a question over there.
It's a follow-up question.
No, after you.
Okay. So what do you say then to that friend of a friend who said, I want to get into coding? What would you recommend now?
That's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, I would at the moment, I would say so anybody that wants to get into coding, the first thing you need to do is actually figure out whether that's true. Because a lot of people want to get into programming because they've heard it's cool, or because they can work from home, or because you can earn a shitload of money, or whatever it is. But none of those are good reasons to get into programming if you don't actually like it. So the first thing you need to do is go and try some programming. There's loads of free resources online. Codecademy is probably the place I would start, or just YouTube and just go and do some programming. That's the first thing I would say, is actually try it out and check that you do want to get into programming, because you'd be surprised as to how many people I talk to actually hate programming despite the fact that they want to get into programming, and then you're like, you should probably not do this. So I'd start there. If they still like it after having actually done some programming and figuring out what it means, then I would have a different answer in 8 days' time than I have today. Is probably the best way of me diplomatically answering that question. I would say that the cheaper way of doing it at the moment would be the better option, because the job opportunities are not as rife as they once were.
Who likes programming? Oh, a few.
Do you give people
I'll ask this the other way, actually. I'll start again. I've seen a lot of people come off comp sci degrees in particular with, like, they understand comp sci and they can kind of do programming, but then they don't know all the other stuff around the edge. So, like, version control is the classic thing that really annoys me.
Yeah.
People don't, like, they might know how to commit some code to Git or something, or half the time they just know SDN. So this was 5 years ago, I was having this problem. But, like, they don't understand branching, or they don't know what to do when it goes wrong, or it's not just, like, do you teach that stuff too?
So short answer is yes, and I 100% agree with you. And actually, this is a big part of why I kind of set up a bootcamp, because even when I did the one that existed, and most of the ones that still exist today don't, they just kind of focus on the core technologies and don't actually teach like how to be a software developer, because there's so much more involved than just writing code, right? It's like how to be a software developer. So that's my company's USP, basically. So yes, we do that. So we get them building projects in teams. Therefore, we get them following like Git branching strategies. We get them building Docker environments. We get them deploying to AWS. We get them like building CI/CD pipelines. We get them like writing like unit testing suites. Like, yes, we get that. We do all of that. I don't know any other bootcamp that does. Some of them will do things like TDD, and therefore there's a bit of testing involved. But nowhere does it the way that we do. Yeah, that sounded like a sales pitch, but it's true.
And I suppose if you're external to all this and you're thinking like your friend's friends who might want to get into it, what questions should they be asking about the bootcamp? How do you assess them? Because presumably they all say they're amazing, but like, what are the killer questions to ask if there are?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do. See here? Yeah, he is. Hello. I think the best thing to do. This is one of my graduates. I'm going to point him out now. Hey, Amius. Hey. The best thing to do is to find somebody like Amius who's been to the bootcamp that you're considering and ask them what it was like, because then you'll actually get an honest answer. There are independent review websites online. Course Report is the best one that you can go to, where basically every bootcamp in the world has a listing on there. Any bootcamp that doesn't have a listing on there, do not even consider it, because that means they deleted their profile when they got bad reviews. But if they've got a profile on Course Report, you can go and look at like real world student testimonials. That's a great place to start. The second thing I would do is go and find graduates of that bootcamp on LinkedIn, because they all list which bootcamp they went to on LinkedIn. You can find graduates and just send them messages and just ask them what it was like, because yeah, then you'll actually get honest answers. There's not really any like killer questions you can ask a bootcamp, because there's always ways around answering any question that make you sound good. You'll only get an honest answer from the graduates.
Right. Is there a question over there?
I was wondering, basically, because we are thinking about the software development, and probably that's your bread and butter, but I wonder how much of your work you teach, for example, DevOps or SREs. Of that part that is actually, we had this question just a second ago about the gig and how to branch this stuff, but there's a lot of other processes like AWS and pipelines and so on. Sometimes developers might not be actually familiar with that. So how much of that work is actually in your work basically included in the stuff?
Yeah. So in case anyone didn't hear, the question was like how much like DevOps or other kind of dev related job training is there. In what we do, if I'm honest, relatively minimal. We focus specifically on like on basically on jobs. So we like our software bootcamp, we're trying to get people into being a junior software developer. Sure, you might progress on to doing DevOps or something in the future, but you've got to start somewhere. So we kind of focus on that as a job title target, if you like, and the same for like data science. And we just pick a job title and go like, that's what we're going to train you for. There are bootcamps out there that do have DevOps as their like target job at the end. There's not very many of them. I don't really know very much about the quality of them, but there are some that do exist. Generally, I think that for most roles like that, they tend to be sort of software development plus. So I think that actually, like my advice to somebody who was interested in getting into DevOps or something like that would probably be to just attend a standard software bootcamp, go and get a job for a company that's large enough that they can then invest in your specialization over to whatever it is that you want to do. That's the path that a lot of our graduates have taken, and we have people that now work in, as like in cyber, in DevOps, in networking, in all sorts. Just because they've kind of then taken the specialist routes once at the company. In my experience, that tends to be the better way into it.
Do you have like a IoT sort of integrated software type track, or is it purely kind of?
No, it's the short answer. No, so we have two courses for software. The in-person one, which is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, React, and Slim, with then like everything around that. Oh, and Node, Docker, MySQL, and Mongo. That's our in-person one. Our online one is a little bit shorter and a little bit cheaper, and that's also HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, PHP, MySQL, Laravel. That's it. We don't do like embedded or anything like that.
It seems like it's quite a comprehensive like set of skills you teach in terms of Git, I suppose kind of everywhere does Git, but or everywhere uses Git, but then the CI/CD stuff, the unit tests. There's a lot of Docker, a lot of companies who are making software that aren't using testing or even things like that. So actually, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the like values, or one of the things that I set out to do when I kind of started the company, was to not just train people for jobs, but actually I wanted to try and reform the software industry a little bit, particularly in this area, and help companies start to do things in a better way. When I started, Docker wasn't even really a thing, and now like we teach Docker to a reasonable level. And most of a lot of our graduates now go out to companies and then start implementing the things that we have taught in those companies. So a lot of companies are now using Docker because I taught graduates and then they implemented them. Implemented that at the company. One of the big things that we've done a lot of is Agile. Every one of our graduates does an Agile certification. And so there's loads of companies now that have got Agile implemented into their workflows that didn't before, because that's what we teach, because we're the biggest provider of training in the Southwest. So we have a huge impact on actually what companies in the area do.
And do you tell them that actually a lot of companies probably don't do things that well? Because if you teach them,
ask him, because we were talking about this earlier. Yeah. Go on, Amius.
Not explicitly, but yeah, between the lines.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You have to be a bit diplomatic.
Yeah. I mean, ages ago, I got chatting to this chap at some meetup. It wasn't this one, some other meetup, and he'd started a company, and he didn't really know much about software development. So he read one of Joel Spolsky's books. It was quite a while ago, and he had the Joel test, and these are the 12 things or 10 things that every software company had to do. So he just assumed that is what all software companies did, and he did it all, and that immediately probably put how they develop things, in the top, top 90% of all companies. So,
it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, do you know if they get any pushback when they go into companies and say, "Well, should we start doing unit testing?"
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely got some war stories about people that have like tried to implement Agile into workplaces that weren't ready for it, or tried to put unit testing into agencies who just did not have the time to implement that. And we've got some really bad stories of like people who then ended up losing their jobs because they were like, I need to write unit tests because Mike's told me to write unit tests and you don't. But yeah, on the whole, we tend to teach our students to be a bit more diplomatic about these things. And I think, and that's part of why we kind of tend to tell them a bit, like, try and be a bit realistic about what the industry is like. And I think we also go really quite hard on the fact that they're going to be entry-level junior software developers, and therefore they don't have all of the answers. So it's all well and good being like, I know how to write unit tests, but that doesn't mean that that's right for that company. And we tend to talk quite a lot about not just the software development side of things, but the business side of things, and like what the value is of the things that you're building, and how like decisions are made, and things like, you know, backlog prioritization of tasks and stuff, so that so they actually have a bit more of a rounded view of like why they're building what they're building, and why you might or might not choose to do certain things.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of these things, I mean, probably all need to go to boot camp, but a lot of these things would be quite useful. Are there like modules of what you do that is kind of accessible to anyone to look at, or is that being done so many times?
Yeah, so the way that our courses work, we teach each subject basically in 2-week block. So, for example, if we're teaching React, we'll teach you React in a theory block, which is where we kind of cover all the concepts of, you know, the virtual DOM and all that kind of stuff. And then we do a week where we set a project, and then basically run it like a software project, where give you a brief or a bunch of stories on the Monday, and you go and work as a team and you build the thing. We have had in the past a few people come to us and say, can I just take that module, because I know everything, I just don't know that one thing, so can I just come and do those 2 weeks? And we would do that if we have done that before. That's definitely an option. We also do a lot of what we call B2B CPD, which is a lot of acronyms, which is upskilling for existing devs. Agile is probably the biggest area that we do that, because we offer certified Agile courses. We also do some like leadership management stuff. We have a course on WordPress, which is like a 3-day one. We have a course on good Git branching strategies. We have one on how to do unit testing, like basically everything and anything. So we can kind of come in and do very specific topics for companies.
So if there's a gap in their knowledge, then they can come to you and you can get one off the shelf.
Yeah, or I mean, we would design bespoke if necessary, if it's within the skill set of my team. But yeah, we have a lot, because we've been going for 10 years, so we have a lot that we can just take off the shelf now. And actually, a lot of like companies that come to us now, we're finding are because our graduates from the boot camps have gone out to work for a company and been like, we need to do unit testing. So then the company comes back to us and then we teach them unit testing. So that works quite well for us because we get more money.
That's good. So we're going to have to wrap up shortly. So yeah, sorry, question there.
Sorry, just check one last question then. On your Agile courses, do you focus at all on estimating scales of
Yes.
Okay, and how do you approach that sort of thing?
It's got a 2-week module.
I mean, you joke, but it's actually only 1 day.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so yes, we do a 1-day Agile Professional Certification, which is a certified Agile course. It does spend time talking about estimations and how to approach it. Yeah.
Alright, I'll take a look at doing the day.
Sure. Sorry, mate. What's your thoughts on just in general about developers using AI for developing code? And is that something that you see coming into the bootcamp for good and bad? You know, the reliance on. Yeah,
good question. So obviously, it's becoming a lot more prevalent with things like Copilot and stuff happening, and so we can't, like as a bootcamp provider, we can't get away from it. Students are using it all over the place, whether we want them to or not. When it kind of first, when GPT kind of first came out, it was a real problem because we were finding that students would stop paying attention because they knew that they could just type in the question they wanted and get some code back out the other end. But then when you get to the second half of the course, when you're really throwing the much harder stuff at them and GPT can't answer those questions, then they just didn't know what was going on. So we've implemented a lot of policies and processes to basically provide guidance on how to use these tools. To not say you can't use them, but to provide guidance on as a really simple example, we have a rule that you're not allowed to ask ChatGPT or Copilot or anything like that how to do something that you don't already know how to do, right? So for you lot of software devs, if you know how to do it already, great. It just automates it just makes you more efficient. Why not? But if you don't know how to do it and you ask something to do it for you, and then it isn't quite right, if you didn't know, how do you know whether it's like whether it's doing it or whether it's got a security vulnerability in it, or if you don't know what you're looking at, and if you're learning, then that's even worse, because now you've got a bunch of code that you don't know if it works and you don't know why it does or doesn't work. So yeah, that's the rule of thumb that we've taken. But then we do just kind of talk more about how to use those tools once you're then out in the industry as well.
I mean, if you've got a bunch of code but you've got no idea how it works, that's probably quite good training for when you come into the real world. Get stuck on legacy projects. Yeah.
True. Yeah. But the problem is that, like, if you ask GPT to generate a bunch of code and then you just slap it into your project and you never go any further, you don't learn, right? If it generates a bunch of code and then you spend the next hour figuring out what it does, then great, you've learned. But people don't take that approach.
I think just another quick one, just an operational one. Like, so how many kind of people on your team that do the kind of training? How do you manage, like, say like with Laravel or React updates and things like that? Like, how does that affect your actual content and the things you teach? Like, how do you keep on top of that? Assuming, Laravel updates and this new stuff, how do you then disseminate that information and train your own team on that stuff as well?
Yeah, this is basically my full-time job. Doing what you just said. It has been for the last few years. So I don't really get involved in teaching as much as anymore, because I spend most of my time updating our curriculums for tech version updates, and then generating either documentation, what we call trainer guides, or actually delivering internal trainer workshops to my training team. So I've got 4 full-time trainers, and I generally take on the role of curriculum lead. I do other stuff as well, but a significant part of my job is basically just, oh, Laravel's got a new version. Okay, cool, now we've got to rewrite everything. And then I do that. Yeah.
Cool. Could do one final question if anyone's got one. No? Okay. Well, in that case, thank you ever so much for that. Really interesting. Right, so thank you all for coming along. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback about the evening, then let me know or let Ben know. Thank you to both Adam and Mike for their input, and I'll round of applause.